Hello everybody, my name is Thomas Hübel. I'm delighted to sit here with Sergio Baroni, a therapist, a healer, spiritual mentor, and a man with a very lovely depth of listening and like a spark of pinpointing essential places, questions, and revelations in life. And a wonderful partner for our interactions. I enjoy our communication a lot. There's a very lovely flow and an inspirational space that opens up when we meet that I enjoy very much. Many people misunderstand the shining as the ego. You know, the shining is not the ego. The shining is the driving life force that wants to expand. The copyright department that says, this is me, and what it achieves belongs to me, this is the thing that we need to be aware of. Because there's many people in the spiritual field that suddenly start thinking, oh, if I'm shining, then this is just what my ego wants. But I don't think it's true. I think the shining and the light and the excellence of humanity is very, very beautiful. This is the beauty of the tree of life that's flowering. This is the beauty of expression of intelligence. But we need to be aware that there's a copyright department that we pay and we hire people to work for this department. And when they come in, we need to be aware. But not aware to dim our light, but to be aware that when these people enter the living room, we will not reject them, because then it's another part of my ego that rejects the copyright department. We will allow them to walk through our living room, but we will not support them, and we will not fight them. You know, we will not support the tendencies of my ego, wanting to take ownership of my achievements, my path, how good I am, and all this. In the Tao Te Ching, there's a sentence that says, and when the master, in this case it's a she, if she finishes her work, she forgets it. So there can be an amazing work in our life. It can take the stage of life. It can be even very famous. If the copyright department doesn't take ownership of it, it's beautiful. It just represents the beauty of the excellence of intelligence of creation. And I think this beauty needs to shine. The ego is not the shining. The ego is the part that wants to take ownership. The ego is the part that starts falling in love with their own creation. You know, once we fall in love with their own creation and we say, okay, this is a bit more mine, you know, it's my achievement.
And it feels so good.
Right.
The light feels so good.
Right.
Right.
And it's good that it feels good. That the light feels good is good, because movement is joy. Ecstasy is movement in expression. It feels good. But there's this part that takes ownership of this good feeling is the one that we need to pay attention to. You know, when you're alive, suddenly through your spiritual practice and through your integration process and your therapy and everything, suddenly your energy lines up. So suddenly many things start to work in your life. You have enough money, the relationships work, with the sexuality it's more satisfying, you know, you have many friends, you have a beautiful sangha of people that are also on the path. But then you fall in love with the garden. You know, the warrior gets tempted by the garden, by the beauty of the garden. And then you hang out one day in the garden, 2 days, but then you forget that you should walk up the mountain. You know, there's a camp on 3,000 meters and it's very beautiful there. So why not to stay there a bit? Why not to stay in the achievements and in the acknowledgement that you get or the fame that starts growing? This is important, I think. That we remind each other when we fall in love with the creation that we are sitting in.
To me, it describes sort of the paradox between inviting what I call big self into one's life, yielding to big self, and yet not taking ownership at the egoic level and thinking that somehow, you know, I get to be the puppet master.
Right.
Right.
Very important. I think that there is a very critical point that needs to be made here with many of these books that say you create your own reality. There's a very fine line that there are, of course, we all live in this perception of the world, and so within this perception, there is in the separate perception of the world, the world is created in a certain perspective within me. So there's a reflection of reality within the perception. And this is made up by all my past, by all my conditioning, by all my wishes, by all my habits. So there is a kind of a separate version of reality that is made and molded by a special string of existence. But then some people come to the idea that, I can actually create literally my reality. I can draw into my life whatever I want, and then the ego actually puts itself on the driver's seat. Mm-hmm. It puts itself on the throne of God. And then we have seen it also in the Second World War in Germany, that this is the beginning of the end, actually. Mm-hmm. Because if I lose the humility that there is always something bigger above me, that animates me and that works through me, and that the ego says that I am the creator, this is very, very dangerous even. Mm-hmm. So that the ego always needs to bow down in front of the bigger mystery that it will never understand. The ego cannot understand. The realization can be it, but you can never understand it from a separateness. And so I think we need to be careful with this, that, as you said, that I as a separate self become the master of all the reality, instead of that I devote myself to reality, and if there is the realization of the whole, then the creator is being realized, but it's not the small self that suddenly owns the big creator. That's very problematic, I think.
Right. And it's also a challenge when one sees that, to not go into shame or, shaming oneself. What a fool I am for, kind of the way that you were describing before, to hold oneself with loving compassion as we are witnessing the ego trying.
Right.
The ego is constantly trying to kind of sneak in, and to be able to keep opening to that greater invitation to love, to serve, to become, without grasping, without trying to own it and control it and manipulate it.
Right, beautiful. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
And that because I can see that another part of my ego tries to get rid of this part of my ego.
Yes.
The shame, and I put myself
ego
down.
Wars.
Yeah. It's a war inside of the same level of my consciousness.
Yes.
And I hold it for real. You see often some people that mix a bit humility with making oneself smaller and thinking that this is devotion. But devotion is actually a shining expression, is the biggest devotion that you can have, because this is your ultimate contract with the divine, is that you will rise up to the highest possibility that you can be, the most enlightened possibility of your existence.
To glorify creation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Here's another question. I'm very interested in the interplay of masculine and feminine energies, and we notice the differences sometimes between, masculine and feminine is in all of us, but when, say, women seem to be so much more open, right?
Right.
To that capability of surrendering, of yielding to something that is greater than the little self.
Right.
And I see so often men tending toward rigidity,
right,
holding on, that sense that I have to thrust myself out into the world, and
right,
and yet men have to be men, women have to be women, right?
Right.
How do you? What's your suggestion around how to awaken through that, whether we're a man or whether we're a woman?
If we want to go beyond the polarities, I think we will need to learn to embody also the other polarity that seems to be more difficult for us. that, and then we can go to the next level of integration, that both of these powers can play through us. So then we find men that can be leaders, but they are in their receptivity, in their listening. You find leaders of companies that can listen, that can take in their employees and respond from a deeper place of vulnerability, because they saw that it's just a social agreement that we have this kind of hero type, which is actually nobody can really live up to this. Everybody is in an effort to try to be it. But if people are more truthful to themselves or more open, then they say, no, it's not me. It's an image that we created in society of a warrior. But there are much, much more refined levels of the warrior, that the warrior is someone that really rests deeply in the vulnerability, but doesn't lose a sense of direction and confrontation. Like that the high art would be that you, or the high art in healing, for example, or in a therapist, would be that you have the water of healing, but you also have a sword that is very sharp. You can walk through life and you can really embrace situations and really experience them, and not experience them as separate from you, but you take them really into the source. But you have also the sword that can cut through things that are simply not right, not on. You don't become fluffy and everything is okay, but then you have this suppressed anger and then you become a depressed seeker because your power cannot go out. And I think if this play can be more fluid in all of us, being men, being women, and we are still very truthful to this biological system that has a preference, that we are not all equal in it, and that we will find our authenticity in it. And I think that therefore it's very important for people to explore both dynamics and learn to listen to both of them. Also for women, that there is a sense of direction and power in the receptivity. Receptivity doesn't collapse in itself and cannot move forward or cannot create a structure or like straightforward movements. So there's a beauty in exploring both of it and not get stuck in the old stereotype models that we got from society, that this is what it is or this is what it is. And then it becomes more a dance within myself and also in the deep understanding of everybody around me. Because I cannot understand the inner perspective of a woman by being shut down in my own feminine part. I will never be able to listen fully to this if I suppress this part in myself, because I think it's not masculine.
Right.
And there are so many men that I have seen that suffer from this hyper-masculine image that they should have become, but they never can live up to because it's nothing to do with their nature.
Right.
And there's so much struggle to achieve an image that we hold in society in order to rest back into the deep experience of what actually moves really in me.
Yeah, the question of what am I really?
Right.
As opposed to this thought, this image, this idea of what I think I should be, whether
Right.
it is a woman or a man.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the presence and the beauty and the flow and the clarity and the love and the compassion, they all dance with each other, and they dance a bit differently in you than in me and everyone else. And we will all, our challenge, I think, is more to find out what's really truly dancing through us or confronting through us. And by resting and living this, I think we will be the most happy. But for this, again, we need a culture that will learn to support each other in this inner core of core energy or core intelligence. The intelligence that you manifest is very different than the one that I manifest. If I try to live your life and you try to live mine, we are both in misery. But if you really, truly embody this, and we support each other, I think then we create a culture of potential. And if the young people in schools and in universities would feel this level of support in their unique intelligence, then I think we would live in a very different culture.
Yes. Yes. And how, in the most straightforward way that you can describe, how can an individual come home to that sense of